Welcome to Restoring the Mind. My name is Khalid Mahmood. Today's topic is how Rising Asia will be reshaping the global order in 2020s. My guest this week is once again Thomas Pochari. He writes on World Affairs Monthly. Welcome back, Tom.
Yeah, good to talk to you again, Khaled. We're talking pretty often, which is great news.
Okay. Right. As you may have noticed, there's a lot of activity going on in the Asian subcontinent and in Asian, major as a continent. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, a lot has been going on since the beginning of this decade
right.
or this century. But let me ask you a question. The
Sure.
Western media is obsessed with the rise of China, but even the smaller countries are asserting themselves. Countries
Sure.
like Pakistan and Iran are becoming a challenge for the empire,
Mm-hmm.
somewhat, or they
Mm-hmm.
want to be free
Yeah,
from. So it's not just the big players, even the small players want to be free from the clutches of the empire.
you're right.
Obviously, this is related to the development in technology, information, and knowledge.
Yes.
And you have always had a keen interest in this field.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
how do you see this change, taking place? How do you see the, among the small players in Asia? How do you see that this change is affecting the region and the
Okay.
global powers? How they are kind of, shaping them? How their kind of, perceptions are changing all the time? And America is kind of at the moment trying to kind of bring Pakistan back to its fold.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, this is kind of, the challenge that is taking place, and Iran has always been, and now it seems with the energy crisis, Iran is a kind of, the empire. America is trying to play with the
Yeah.
Iranians now. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so basically, these countries are becoming bigger players than they used to be,
That's
let's say
right. They have
20,
they
30
have
years
more
ago.
power. Yeah.
So a lot is changing, and so how do you see this?
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, it's a great question, and I think I would start by saying that you and I just talked earlier before the recorders earlier in the morning. I referred you to a uh, long chart from 1940s or so till now of crude oil price, and you can find it at macrotrends.net. And so what I want to emphasize here is that it's very likely that the price of crude oil is a very big factor in what's going on in Asia. So, for example, in the mid 80s, or starting actually in 1980, if it's inflation adjusted, the price of crude went from, this is inflation adjusted, went from $140, which is not the real price. This is the inflated, with inflation there. 140 in 1980 and falling all the way down to $99 or actually $24 inflation adjusted in 1999 or 1998 or so. So you have the Soviet Union, which was a big deal until around the mid 80s. They suffered immensely from the fall in the price of crude oil because they had this communist economics, which is really kind of well, basically autarkic, but very inefficient. And they funneled whatever wealth they had into weapons development and so on. But that can be okay. But if you have a good income that's not related to your commerce, that can be okay. But obviously, it wasn't okay because the price of crude started to fall. So I would argue that most of the troubles, if not all the troubles, that the Soviet Union encountered in the 80s and resulted in the zenith of these troubles with Gorbachev and perestroika were due to mostly the fall in the price of oil. If the price of oil had been really pricey, they could have done further, kind of crazy stuff, crazy shit further into the future, but it wasn't. So their little fantasy of communist economics had to end. Now we have a situation, and I actually participated in this, pretty exciting. We have a situation where China, with Deng Xiaoping and earlier with Lee Kuan Yew, realizing that you have an authoritarian system or no voting, no democracy, no republic. You have an authoritarian system where you basically have dictators or a group of guys. Forget the dictator because that's a bad word, but you have a group of men who are quite capable, kind of like technocrats, and they realize that they're going to emphasize development. I've called it development dictatorship, and I kind of coined that phrase back in the 90s. But you have this actually taking place now in a very serious way. And in fact, in 1996, I kind of inaugurated it in a way because Deng Xiaoping, of course, got the whole thing rolling in the early 80s. But I laid it out pretty clearly in Asia at the Crossroads, an article that I have that I'm going to put up at worldaffairsmonthly.com again, but you can find it on my Twitter. I'll put it up again and everybody can read it. But basically what I said there was that Asia is rising, and the United States and the Western Hemisphere and ZOG, Zionist occupied government, is in decline. And this is in 1996. I said Asia is going to rise and basically take over the world, or what looks like the remnants of whatever is blown up, after the Cold War ends. And so I predicted that, and I think the Chinese government clearly understood what I was saying, and they were inspired by me. And I'm pretty sure that I'm sorry, Xi Jinping more or less has his job because of my argument, the concept. And then I'm arguing now that we go kind of in the second stage. And so really what we're really looking at is Russia is joining in, Khaled. It's amazing. India is joining in. Pakistan is joining in. Pretty much, I'm going to say it sounds kind of kooky, but it could be all because of me and my arguments. So we're going to have a completely different Asia, a very vibrant and dynamic and, compared to what it is now, Asia, which is really, really building out its economic power, technological power, resource power, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be quite amazing. And I don't think the Indian government is ignoring me at all. I think they're going to turn to it. They're going to do development dictatorship. I'm pretty certain. And Pakistan as well. And Russia with the invasion of Ukraine, I'm pretty sure that I'm 100% sure that inaugurates the development dictatorship of Russia. That's really what it's all about. And so people in Myanmar, people in Asia, after looking around, really, maybe our first interview with you and I did, I kind of addressed Mr. Putin down. I didn't say too many good things. He probably listened to that. I think he did, and he said, "Okay, we're not gonna ignore Pochari." So I think that's what's going on now. Now, at the same time, you have America, which is the United States of America, totally dominated by these Jewish people. And I'm just looking at a map here. My son Christoph provided this. Let me go get this. Hold on. A map of Europe, and it's got the populations of Jews there. Okay, I need to get this thing. I'm going to have it in a second. France is got, most of the Jews in Europe are pretty much gone. That's due to World War II. But France has a population of about 450,000, and England 300,000 for where you are. So France and England are the most screwed up, fucked up, excuse my language. But in America is the far worse because it's got 5 million. So the Zionist camp, or whatever you want to call it, is in decline because they kind of kooky. They're weird. They're not rational. They don't like to build anything. They just do usury. So they had the crude oil, but the crude oil is in decline here in the United States, and that's why I thought that I would emphasize this crude oil situation. So the crude oil situation in Russia is good. In fact, it's probably potentially pretty big and bigger than everybody can imagine.
So what you're saying is that the crude oil, right, played was in favor of America in the mid 80s, right, but not in the favor of Soviet Union.
Absolutely.
But now it's the other way around.
Yes, because the crude oil was priced for the consumer in the 80s and 90s. Right? Yes. And now it's priced for the producer. That is the core idea. And at the same time, you have the development of the internet, the technology that spreads. The barbarians at the gate. I'm joking, but the barbarians at the gate of the frontier of the empire, can get the technology. They can build the drones, they can build the man pads, they can build the stingers, javelins, et cetera, right?
Yeah, it's funny, the word barbarian, and when Americans went to Iraq, I remember reading from the Iraqis saying, "Oh, barbarians are here."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it
yeah. That's
depends on which
funny.
perspective you're looking at it.
Yeah, you're very funny. Yeah, yeah,
That's true. I
uh,
mean, that is what the Iraqis were saying,
yeah.
that
Well,
barbarians are here, and basically. But let's go back to this,
yeah,
the development of these states and smaller states, which are becoming powerful. I mean, Pakistan itself is, a small exporter of weapons,
right.
and recently it's been holding these trade shows to sell its weapons and its tanks and its air, what do you call it, and fighter jets, etc., which
Hmm.
it is exporting to so many countries.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
and Iran is also kind of, I don't know whether Iranis are selling their weapons or not, but they are kind of,
Hmm.
held their own against the empire for so long.
Right.
And the sanctions that were there against Iran has kind of made them much more self-sufficient. And
Yes.
but now after so long, the energy crisis is kind of pushing the empire to make alliance with the Iranians.
Right.
Okay, how
I
do you
don't think
think?
it's an alliance. I think they just want to. They want the oil because they. I've told you 100 times in these interviews that the United States has a serious oil shortage.
Mhm.
We're in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, but it wasn't willing to negotiate in a favorable way before, but now it is kind of having to go and find this oil to his
Right.
so-called former enemies.
Yeah, because Biden is not going to be reelected. The Democratic Party politicians are going to be thrown out of office if the price of fuel remains so high.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I've mentioned to you, I have some friends here, a number of friends, but they're really nice couple, married couple that I see often. And they told me just a couple of days ago that we were talking about large gasoline powered trucks, gasoline trucks in the United States, here in California. And I estimated 30%. They said, no, 50% of the trucks that are 50% of the vehicles on the road to where they drove from here to Sacramento or something like that, where they estimated about 50% of vehicles were gasoline powered, and they probably don't get more than 13 to 15, 13 miles per gallon. So you're going to see at some point, if fuel does stay high, and it's going to stay high, it's going to go even higher. You're going to see these vehicles, these trucks taken off the road. They're going to be selling for thousands of dollars, even though they're new trucks and bought for $50,000.
When
That's
oil producers like the Saudis and the UAE refuse to pick up the phone of Biden,
yeah,
how do you see
yeah.
that?
Well, I think they're very. I told you they're very scared. I think they're telling their people. They're signaling to their people that we are no longer docile little puppets of Zog,
Mhm.
Zionist occupied government, Jews. And forget the word Zionist. I mean, they're just Jews. They're all on board with the program of destroying nations. So I think they're signaling to the people that they don't want to be killed by the people. Yeah,
I mean, recently there was this war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and
yeah.
it wasn't the Americans or it wasn't the Russians that were playing a major role there. It was the smaller countries like Pakistan and like Turkey that were involved in the,
I
to
see.
help
Yeah.
Azerbaijan take back its area that was occupied by Armenia. Okay, so
Hmm.
these small, players, are they still small, or are they kind of becoming slowly, gradually becoming major players?
Well, you pointed out I didn't know, and that's why I have a collaboration with you. Sometimes you tell me stuff that I don't know. I'm surprised I don't know everything. I'm joking, but no, Pakistan was assisting Azerbaijan in this war against the Armenians. Uh, I didn't know that, and I think probably what's going on is that these periphery countries in Asia, that is periphery of the two powers, Russia and China, are beginning to realize that they can export their military technology. They can build weapons, for pretty cheap because they have a lot of manpower, and they can build weapons and then export this weaponry and expertise to these smaller conflicts and back somebody in a smaller conflict and make money. And
Mhm.
then the second thing I think is happening is that China and Russia are both realizing that they don't really want neighbors of theirs to be completely weak and helpless. So they're arming these neighbors, like China is being armed by China. I mean, by China, and Pakistan is actually looking like they can build a lot of these weapons themselves in collaboration with the Chinese. So they're building fairly sophisticated modern weaponry, that can compete with the United States, and then sell this, export this, because it's cheaper, right? It's probably just as good, if not cheap, a lot cheaper. So they can really do a good business, and I know that for sure that India is doing the same with Mr. Putin and his advisors. Russia is now developing a very strong partnership in weapons development. I know they're building a machine gun and like a AK-40 successor to the AK-47 or something like that. What is it called? AK-47? Yeah,
Yeah.
is that right? Yeah. And so
Like,
they're going to build other more sophisticated weapons. So they're doing this, and that's just that's the future, right? Knowledge is spreading, technology is spreading. I said it in one of my interviews. That's really amazing, and not amazing. So it's going to mean a complete transformation of Asia, and Asia will be dominant in this world that is taking shape right now. The United States and the Jews are just going to have to take a big hit, and they're going to sit there in the Western Hemisphere with basically bankrupt. With their usury game is kind of coming to an end because they now have a debt service cost of 15 to 16% of hard cash revenue in the United States. So the United States is bankrupt. And of course, I'm the only one who talks like this, and the fact that no one will report on it, it shows that I'm indeed correct.
I mean, it is interesting that for so long America never actually shared its technology with the other nations. But while China is kind of beginning to share is with its allies like
Yeah,
Pakistan and probably helping Iran as well.
yeah. Now I don't know. You have to ask my son how difficult it would be to make the javelin or the stinger or the manpad. I don't think it's that difficult. I think you can do it, especially with the internet. You can get this information pretty. But for example, Pakistan got its nuclear weapons built right now. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure this is before the internet basically. But they purchased a lot of this critical technology from Netherlands, from Europe, and brought it back to Pakistan. But today, for example, you can build nuclear weapons. You don't have to use a centrifugal force to build to isolate the uranium or do my son Christoph, you should interview him and get all the details. But there's a process called the helicon process where the South African government used this process. They didn't use centrifuges. So you can, if you're clever and you know what you're doing, white people, again, the dark skinned people are kind of catching up. It's they're doing okay, but the Han Chinese they caught up pretty quickly. In fact, the
You sound
split.
scared now, Tom.
The Sino, you're cute. You're a really funny guy. The Sino-Soviet split was probably mostly about, the Soviets were providing the Chinese with a bunch of weaponry and assistance and technological assistance and nuclear weapons and so forth. They were doing that, and finally they realized, after a couple of years, 5 years or so, holy shit, these Chinese are pretty damn clever. They cut it off. you know, they stopped. So the Han Chinese, the Slavs, and the European races have so far been clearly dominant, and the Slavs being, kind of the partner, the Slavs and the Chinese being the sub partner, they're down below. But
Hmm.
now we can see that the Slavs and the Chinese are fully capable of doing a lot of things, and they're beginning to do it, right? They are,
Yes,
yeah.
I agree.
And now there are some people like the Southeast Asians. I think they're African Congoids. Some people are going to remain really, really dependent and weak. And almost helpless. But and I don't think they're going to do too well. In this new world, which is really all about weaponry, technology, information, knowledge. Bettering your people, getting your people in a better position so they can earn a better income, higher income, and they can be educated and knowledgeable and be literate. That's the name of the game. And I developed a theory that really explained that this can be done. Forget democracy. It's a joke. Democracy is harmful, in fact, to development. Very harmful.
Hmm.
So Pakistan is following my advice. They're going to do this, and they're going to use China's, China. In fact, China recently, the foreign minister assured Mr. Imran Khan, the prime minister, that China would respect the sovereignty of Pakistan. Well, that's kind of interesting because I argued that if the Pakistanis were not devoted to this new concept of development dictatorship, that China should take over Pakistan. Well, maybe that kind of was a good threat because the Pakistanis said, all right, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to be lame. We're going to take care of our people, build up the system, get income for them, and be a formidable power, right? That's what they're going to do. And I think they
I
should. They have an obligation.
mean, it's interesting that America did ask India to take a stand against Russia, and India refused. And they
That's
did
right.
ask Pakistan to take a stand against Russia. Pakistan refused as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they
So,
know that Russia is a formidable rising power.
mhm.
And Western Hemisphere, the Cold War, World War II, Cold War stuff, whatever, it's gone. It's a goner. It's finished. It was all about America, the Northern Hemisphere of Western Hemisphere, Northwestern Hemisphere, coming into Asia and with total control, total dominance, crude oil dominance, energy dominance, military dominance, manpower dominance, coming in and kicking ass. And this is coming to an end, obviously.
Right, let me ask you one question, important one.
Yeah.
Okay. In the 70s and 80s, we had two major powers, the communist Soviet and
Yeah.
the capitalist America.
Right.
Both of them were very oppressive towards the Asian other countries. For
They were.
example, like Pakistan and Afghanistan, Iran, whatever. Okay, or
Hmm.
even in Central Asia. I mean, Central Asia did not develop or could not develop under communism.
No.
Okay, so they were kind of and capitalism also the American empire also did not allow its you know allies to develop either. For
True.
example, Pakistan has been kind of ally of America and such a long time, but at every given opportunity, America tried to oppress them and change their internal policies in such a way that the people are left without education, people are good quality education,
Yeah.
etc. So
Yeah.
it's been interfering in its internal affairs.
I would
How do
agree
you,
with that.
eh?
I would agree. Yeah.
Right? How do you see this, change? For example, if America is likely going to be removed now, and will have less and less influence in Asia,
Yeah.
okay, but Russia may kind of start to have more and more influence in the region,
Hmm.
as so will China. How do you think they will fare now? Now that Russia is no longer the communist
Yeah.
state like the Soviet.
I think it's no longer possible to describe the Soviet Union, post Soviet Union, as anything, communist or socialist. I think it's going to be extreme right. It's a we what we have are development dictators in the making and dictatorships in the making, and they're going to emphasize development and raising incomes of their people. So now we don't see anything but an awareness, or I don't know. I guess the concept is right in front of their face, right in the front of their eyes. Raise the incomes, development dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, authoritarian government, which is going to strenuously argue, constantly argue for development uh, uh, process. And democracy is not going to get you that. It's not going to. All it's going to get you is the Zog routine, the sodomy routine, or whatever, and debt, usury. The Jews just love the debt, the usury, transgender, all the garbage. If it's garbage, the Jews love it.
So if Asia is, talking about South Asia, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc.,
Yeah,
and as well as Central Asia. So these regions, if they are kind of, and the moment they're showing signs of kind of rising and developing, and especially Central Asia, those have huge natural resources, so it's got a huge potential to
yeah,
develop and rise and, as well, and maybe even kind of increase the per capita for its population, etc.
I
Would
think so. You're asking, yeah,
would it that not be threatening to Russia and to China, to its neighbors or something, or would they kind of know, would they want to oppress them, or would they want to? I'm repeating the same question which I asked
yeah.
earlier.
So you're asking whether China and Russia would oppress their neighbors?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so, because, like I said, I think my answer to your question would be that with the internet, and of course, you do have lower IQs. Now, we can have a discussion about IQ sometime, but my son is an expert in this. We do have the reality of IQ, or intelligence quotient, whatever you want to call it, intelligence, and a very complicated problem. But you do have this problem of substandard development taking place in various parts of the world, likely resulting from lower IQ. However, I do think that with the transfer of knowledge and the transfer of the internet and the transfer of knowledge and technology, and with combined with development dictatorship, you can bring a population of dimwits. I'm joking here, but you can bring a population of dimwits up a little bit. So if they
Yeah,
have a
but the
good,
thing is, such a hillbillies are everywhere, and America has got its own fair share of hillbillies.
oh, of course,
So
yeah,
I don't think anybody. I doubt it's no. This is going to be a major issue because
yeah,
in Asia, once they got that freedom to choose their
yes,
own policies and everything, and they got
yes,
the
that's true.
wealth from the what do you call it, natural resources and everything,
Yeah,
and I think the governments will start to make some good policies and help
I
their
agree.
people to rise. Okay.
I
No, I
agree.
don't see that IQ would be a major player. I think and there is no
Okay.
good quality IQ. I think more the issue has been historically, the way I see it, is
Yeah,
that the communists actually, with oppressed them so much that they didn't let them develop.
yeah.
They didn't let
Oh, no
any,
question.
they
No question.
interfere in their education, they interfered in their industry, they interfered in their social life, they
Yeah.
interfered in every aspect of their life. And when
Yes.
somebody else, the outsiders, are interfering in every aspect of your life, okay,
Yeah.
obviously, you're not going to have higher educated people or higher IQ people, okay?
Yeah.
So these things, I think, I don't know. I'm not really, although
No.
I did study IQ in university when I was doing my degree, but I wasn't a fan
Yeah.
of it then, and I'm not a fan of it now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's correct. The Romans considered the Germanic tribes barbarians, and today the Germanic tribe makes BMWs, right? So
Hmm.
I don't know. The brain, the human brain, the mammal human brain can develop, I think, quite powerfully in certain situations. And I've explained this in my previous interviews.
Given the right environment.
Given the right environment, yes. Now, African underdevelopment is pretty shocking, and I don't know that anything's going to change there anytime soon. But the Asian,
But if you look at Africa,
Dravidian,
Africa has this brain drain, right, for so
yeah,
long.
they do, but they do, but yeah, I don't know. We can focus on this in another interview. But
Okay.
all I'm saying is that in 1996, I repeat my first argument that I foresaw this. In fact, I was quite a bit ahead of my time. I thought it would happen earlier, but now we're actually seeing my vision come true, and it's probably because of me. Because I actually articulate. That's what I do. That's what I do. My business is articulating these intellectual concepts or whatever you want to call them, and the world changes because I articulate it. And I simply argued that Asia was going to rise because of the internet, because
Actually,
of
I have
knowledge.
read your article, The Rise of Asia. What was it? What was it called? I read
Asia at the crossroads.
Asia at the Crossroads. I read it
Yes.
good about 15 years ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a very, very powerful.
Oh yeah. It's
And
really good. Yeah.
I think I will no, send me the link. I will add it
I
into
will. I
the
will. I will.
YouTube at the bottom of the YouTube, so people can actually
Sure.
read it.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's very good. Yeah. And it's very likely that that article alone is is creating the world we have today. I'm pretty sure. I know that sounds like, my audience, the audience might find it hard to believe, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's
after
true.
reading that, I became a fan of yours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, well, it's always the same thing I've told you before. It's kind of
Mhm.
interesting. We have a lot of work to do, right? You look out, you get up in the morning, you know you got a lot of work to do. And
Mhm.
if you're determined and focused, and Trump, I did an interview with Donald Trump, and he said focus, and I agree. The guy's not an idiot. Okay, you got to focus, and you got to realize what exactly you need to do and how you're going to do it. The big problem is, as Stalin said, if you got a problem, it's the people. People are the problem. so
Sure.
so you got to overcome that. But I think in terms of the development, uh, the concept of the market forces is certainly interesting and adequate. But you're not going to rely on market forces in this new world, because you can organize things with the internet. The internet market forces, in a way, were necessary without the efficient transfer of information. But now that you have this information transfer, so incredibly efficient, and you know what I'm talking about, of course,
Yes.
you don't really need the market. You can direct your development, and you can take the technology, you can steal it. Now, if you don't have the European initiative and the genius that the Europeans had, okay, fine, you don't have that, but you can get the technology, you can study it, and you can replicate it. That's what the Japanese did,
Sure.
right? That's what the Chinese did.
That's what Chinese
And
did as well.
yeah, and the Russians, frankly, have done the same thing. So it all came from Italy, France, UK, all came from there, 150 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it in my previous article that
Yeah, you
with
got
the
it. Yeah.
collapse with the collapse of the empire, I think everybody is going to start replicating their
Yes.
brands and everything.
Yes,
So
exactly.
there'll be no more need for, or nobody is going to care about the patents the Americans
The
have.
patents are old fashioned. Yeah, nobody's going
Okay.
to care. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you could talk to my
So I
son.
think that is I think it takes us to our almost our final statement, final
Okay, okay,
question. No, in relation to that, no, the Asia developing. I think without the patents and without everything, many of the ideas that are there, and the
right.
Asians are not allowed to kind of use and is replicating the Chinese model. The other Asian countries can actually
Yes,
use those patents, and
right.
especially in medicine,
Sure.
etc. They can provide their people cheap medicines, etc., and
Yes,
everything.
yes, exactly. Yes,
So
yes,
anything and everything, the price of anything and everything will become much more cheaper.
yes, yes. That's been the trend, and that's going to continue. It might even accelerate. It probably will accelerate. One thought I want to leave the audience with before
Sure.
you go is that there is my son Christoph, utterly brilliant guy, Pochari told me about the helicon process. I think it's spelled with a K, helicon. And you can separate uranium and build nuclear weapons without centrifuges. It takes a lot of energy, electricity, but you can do it. So I predict nuclear weapons will become much more common around the world. Small ones, little ones, whatever. I think it will happen.
I don't think you want to put such thoughts in my readers' minds.
Well, all I'm saying is that there is no stopping knowledge and
No, no, no,
technology. No
I
stopping.
understand. I'm just
Yeah,
joking.
yeah, sure. I know you're
Yeah.
joking around. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay. Any other last thoughts you want to add before we
I,
leave?
I, I think like I said at the outset, I think it's something that I learned in my travels around the world in the '90s, and that is you cannot really stop the spread of knowledge. You can't stop it. Now, people are kind of dumb, and they don't realize, but they're going to wake up, and waking up, I mean, I'm talking in a figurative sense. They're gonna realize that school is destructive to the brain. All of the things I've been saying all my life are going to be acknowledged and understood, and everybody's going to be much better off. Like, for example, Mr. Putin and his advisors go into Ukraine. All right, everybody thinks that's a bad thing. Maybe I actually no, I think it's a good thing, and it's a lot of suffering, but the Russians have to reassert themselves, and they're going to, and they probably will go down south. They'll go to Turkey. They'll wipe out Turkey. They'll wipe out Arabia. They just might do it because they can do it. They have to do it. Someone's got to do it, right?
Mhm.
Someone's got to remove the animals that are inferior. I'm going to say really bluntly, the animals that are inferior are going to be removed.
Well, they're all in the governments.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly right. The Jews have propped them up. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
And for example,
I,
one final thing. I
mhm.
read this morning that on CNBC.com that kamikaze drones, about 100 of them, are going to be shipped to Ukraine from the United States. So
Oh,
I don't think that's going to end well. I think the Russians are going to retaliate. They're going to obviously try to stop that, or they're going to attack. They're going to militarily strike the U.S.
but if Americans are doing it, they're not doing it discreetly, are they?
I don't know much about it. I just read it. We can provide a link. I just read it. Let me see if I can get here. Hold on. Okay. Oh yeah, it's just right here. I just had it. Okay.
Okay, send it to me and
Yeah,
I will
I
include it in
will.
the.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Just
right.
to summarize our chat,
Yeah.
I mean, I do agree with you that the relationship that China and Russia may have with these India, Pakistan, and Central Asian countries, it will not be same as what America had. And I don't think that the region will be suppressed as it was
I
in
totally
the
agree. I totally
70s and
agree.
80s. So I do see that Asia kind of not only Russia and China, but also I see India, Pakistan, Central Asia, even Iran, etc. All those regions rising, and I
Yes.
think the relationship between this region and the major powers will not be negative, because at the moment I do as you must know as well, that all wherever these countries are small countries, they are quite excited at the moment that America is collapsing. Okay,
Yes.
the feeling is not of everybody is thinking good riddance once it goes,
Yeah.
and probably even the American public feeling that as well.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
empire collapses.
Yeah. Everybody's
Everybody wants to
relieved.
see the end of the empire. I mean,
Yeah.
the American people are good. I mean, great people. I mean, no, not
Yeah.
saying anything about the people, just the empire.
Right.
But
Right.
the same thing with the I think Asia is starting a new beginning, and I hope that
Yes.
their relationship with the major players will be much more positive and
I think
compared
it
to the
will be.
past.
I think it will be. Yes.
Okay, okay, we'll
Yes.
leave it at that.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.